Okay, so I had a request here to go over the stylized grass material that I made for a project back in a old class that I took. And the big thing with this grass that makes it special is it interacts with the player. It is still a work in progress, just so you know. But it does actively interact with the player, and this is all done through the material graph and not through any sort of in-game programming or collision or anything like that. So we're going to hop straight in here to my grass blueprint. Some of the big things behind it, I do have a wind gradient and wind panner going across it. I mean, you can just see that kind of blowing across, gives it some basic movement, makes it so it's not so boring. I do have the texture here. This is just a basic hand-drawn texture. And of course, being me, I inverted the colors by accident. You always want whatever you want to see to be white because I'm doing this based off of a mask. So I used a 1 minus X, makes all the white black and makes all the black white, and plugged it into the opacity and the opacity mask. And that makes it this material that has white for the grass where I drew it, and then it's clear everywhere else. And my mesh behind it is just two planes. It looks kind of funky here, but you can kind of see how there's one plane that goes across, the other one goes across the other way, and there's put in crosses. And the material itself is two-sided, so it applies on both sides of those planes. And that makes it so each little tuft of grass is only, I think 8 vertices, 8 or 12, whatever. And it's super lightweight, so you can just flood your world with this vegetation and it makes no difference on your performance whatsoever. But the big thing behind the interactivity is this section up here, this character interaction section. Basically what it does is it takes the player location. This is done with a material collection parameter, and it's just a parameter. Take a vector parameter, add one in, and change the name to player location. It gets your player location. It's pretty simple and straightforward. Default value is just 0 for everything. Automatically fills that during runtime. But it takes that. The mask node, it just takes a vector, splits into RGB, so then you can grab out of that as a vector. So this puts out vector values here. And this node here, distance, just calculates the distance between the absolute world position and the player location. And if that distance is less than 256, this divides it and just kind of applies it through here so that if a player is this distance or closer to a instance of this mesh, that's where it starts affecting it. The texture coordinate just gets masked in here. This is also a vector. You just pull the G value out of it. It's the second value. Actually, I think texture coordinate's UV. Sorry. And this just pulls the V value out of it. So it takes the second value, pulls it out, inverts it, basically do it to a power of 2, or you can just multiply it by itself, then multiply it by this number you grabbed from the distance earlier. And then that all gets multiplied by a normalized version of the absolute world position subtracted, the player location subtracted from the absolute world position. This gets multiplied in with, these are some scalar parameters you can add to it. This is a strength I did, and you can take your strength. This is your X and Y value and your Z value. Basically, it's just how much your grass is going to move in the X and the Y value, and then how much it's going to move in the Z value here. Obviously, you don't want to move it in the Z because that's going to move it up and down. You do not want that. But X and Y, you do want it to spread. And it spreads in 100 units of measurement, whatever it is here. 100 unreal units is how far it moves. But then you multiply that in and plug it down in here. I have it adding to the wind gradient mask and plug it into world position offset. So what that does is it takes your wind and it doesn't just overwrite that completely with your movement from your player. So if I go back in and move around, you can see the wind still affects the grass as I'm standing in it. You can see it's still bobbing up and down a little bit and kind of moving around. That's because the wind's still affecting it. The reason it looks jagged is because of that up here, this strength parameter. Because it's 100, there's no logic deciding which direction that a plane should go or anything right now, and that is kind of my next step in this material. This is still very much a work in progress, but that's kind of the foundation of where I am at and how I started getting this material working so that it functions at runtime completely. There's no extra code to it, and reacts super well to the character moving through. I mean, you can see there's really no lag behind it or anything. I do have it changes colors based off of if an enemy's already walked in and stuff, and that grass still moves around. I think it's a cool effect. I've had other people say they think it's a cool effect too, so I like to believe it's a pretty cool effect. But yeah, that's basically the entirety of it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Make sure to try to either answer you there or make another video on it.